But when we're talking about the difference between someone that trains and being like Mr. Olympia, like the difference between that is that the person that wants to be Mr. Olympia was dreaming of that when they were a child. They were wishing for that to happen and they wanted to work for that to happen. Whereas the other people, they kind of stumble into this, they enjoy it, and they may train hard, but without that true inner desire and that hunger, like that thirst that needs to be quenched, why are you ever going to put in the same amount and obtain the same amount? It's not going to happen unless you're some real freak with the genetics of an absolute god who just gets a response that other people don't get. It's not going to happen. Every single decision of the day now becomes a question of is it going to add towards that end result? Because you can't afford to second guessing anything when you're at that point. Like, I use Samson as an example because we both turned professional in the same year. He's a friend of mine who we've been competing back and forth with and switched places over and over again, and now he's finally reached this kind of level of where he's won the second biggest show on the planet. And I know the only thing he's done in order for that to happen he's not done anything new, nothing exaggerated. It's that he hasn't had a day where he hasn't not done. So it's all those little small things like you say. So I'm going to the gym and I'm like, yeah, I've got to train hard. Of course you've got to train hard. I've got to eat my meals. Yeah, I've got to eat my meals. I've got to look at the clock. I've got to know when to sleep. And a lot of people can do that, 5 out of 7 days a week. It's easy. And then you might reward yourself with a late night and a movie. The difference between Samson and someone trying to, the people that win in the big thing is that they don't take that time. So there's that saying about the sacrifice without regret kind of thing you hear. Yeah. That sacrifice is something, they're small sacrifices, but they're very frequent and they happen very often. Yeah. And then they accumulate into something really large. So, by telling yourself, I'm going to be in bed by 10 p.m. every day for a year is the difference possibly from you being the person that come fifth at that show last year and then winning it this year. Because there is only so much you can do, and it's more likely going to be based on what did you not do. It's not fashionable. Because if you're not pulling, like a single arm cable and doing it with perfect execution, then you're getting penalised for being someone who doesn't know how to train, which just makes no sense. Because any of the bodybuilders that we look at as legendary, the Ronnie Colemans, the Branch Warrens, one thing they all had in common is they'd go into the gym and they would make sure that they terrorised their body to the point of having to leave the gym and go home and replenish. Now it's just we're in like a kind of time where people are unfortunately being educated by people that haven't walked the walk, and because it's very easy to make something sound fashionable and sound progressive and sound it's very easy to project results on people when you use terms that sound interesting or if you show documentation saying so. We're in a time where science and documents and research is like being thrown at people and it's overwhelming experience. But the one thing that is invaluable and goes beyond anything and can override any documentation, any research is experience. And I feel like when we're training and I'm doing like a video like the other day and I'm talking, the main message I'm trying to get across really, if you were to limit the amount of things I say, because I know I talk a lot, is I'm just trying to give you guys straight from the experience. And that experience more often than not is going to come down to meat and potatoes. Like Luke Sando used to say, the meat and potatoes. The broad strokes, you used to always say concentrate on the broad strokes and then the small strokes later. The broad strokes are your, the barbell rows, the eating your protein, the taking your health supplements. And then all the other stuff, that isn't that important. If that starts to overwhelm the importance of those things I've just mentioned and becomes more of your day, then you can only dedicate so much energy to those things that are fundamental and vital in progress, that they become something you do less and less. Because, like I say, how many hours in a day have you got and how much effort, how much energy have you got? And if you're spending all your energy on the things that aren't going to give back as much, because let's be honest, every action you take gives back a certain amount. Some things, naturally, you do give back more than other things. And with bodybuilding, the one thing you have to not confuse yourself with is never underestimate the things that give back a lot. And simply put, like you go in the gym, let's say I give you half an hour to train legs. Yeah. You can be that man or that woman that makes the choice of, I'm going to do leg extensions or I'm going to do squats for half an hour. What are you going to get more out of? Like, it's just those little decisions, and everything comes down to that. Even down to the quality of the food you eat. You know, like, okay, well, I can really monitor the food I eat. I can gram for gram work out what I'm meant to have, or I can be blasé and, estimate. Quality of food, how much quality are you going to put in your body? You're going to be the person that's going to skimp. You wouldn't skimp on, the clothes you wear to the gym. Why are you skimping on the meat that you're putting in and eating? Like, it comes down to what's really important to you.
Yeah.
Like, ultimately, how well you do in bodybuilding, like most of how well you do in bodybuilding comes down, was it really important enough to you? External versus internal. Like an external motivation is good, but it's never going to have the same weight behind it as an internal one. If someone's reason for going to the gym was based on an emotional event in life that made them feel a certain way and they needed to counteract it with a response that was, self-development or whatever, that's going to equate to a much more fruitful endeavour with weight training, 100%. And I think a lot of people just like the idea of training, and I have nothing against that. Like, I think it's cool. I'd rather people train than not train and look after themselves. But when we're talking about the difference between someone that trains and being like Mr. Olympia, like the difference between that is that the person that wants to be Mr. Olympia was dreaming of that when they were a child. They were wishing for that to happen and they wanted to work for that to happen. Whereas the other people, they kind of stumble into this, they enjoy it, and they may train hard. But without that true inner desire and that hunger, like that thirst that needs to be quenched, why are you ever going to put in the same amount and obtain the same amount? It's not going to happen unless you're some real freak with the genetics of an absolute god who just gets a response that other people don't get. It's not going to happen. And then, do you know what though? This is one thing that's interesting. I find myself. We were speaking about this briefly the other day. Is having to sometimes reinvent that why, because. I'll say this from first-hand experience. My reason for bodybuilding was very, very largely about my mother, because being a son, one thing you want to do as a son is you want to grow up and you want to make your mother proud. You want to be like, look, I'm successful, and I wasn't really into many things, but bodybuilding was one thing I kind of clicked with to a degree, where I saw some successes even from a youngish age, where I was like, this has potential. A lot of people are going to find themselves have a reason in the beginning, and things could change. Mine certainly changed when my mother passed away, because it felt for a time like you'd just pulled away my reason, like it's just vanished into nowhere, and then you're in a bit of you're in a void. You're in a pretty dark place, because bodybuilding entails a lot of effort, and there's a lot of good and there's a lot of bad, but there's also a lot of time, and you get one shot like at life, so you only have so many days to be on this planet. And you want to spend your days how you want to spend your days. And they have to be spent in a way that you feel that was right. It was very easy to feel like I was spending my days right when my mother was around, because I could pick up the phone and hear her say, well done. Or I could pick up the phone and hear her say, I'm really enjoying seeing what you're doing. When that's absent, that's no longer there, and you're the only person you've got to ask, am I doing the right thing, is yourself. It comes a little bit of a difficult endeavour. So then you find reinvention is something that you have to have. And, obviously we're at this NPC Sweden today. And there's an audience there that's going pretty wild for you to do guest posing. I've found, and we'll go into this subject in a minute about this imposter syndrome. I found that events like this they have to become your why, because your sole reason isn't the one it once was. So now, like, the joy I see in other people, or the support I see in people that are from the community, it'll never be the same as my mother's, but it's the best of what I have. And when you're not done yet on a goal and you still have a purpose, you have to make do. And I'm very appreciative that people even want me to still do it. So I just take the energy of people like that, friends like these guys, Yannika's love, people that I consider close enough to care about their opinion of me, to keep pushing forward. But then with that, because your main reason's kind of gone, and this isn't me being depressed, it's just I like to share real life shit. We were talking about imposter syndrome. When my mum was alive, she would tell all her friends, my son's a pro bodybuilder. Like, if anyone asked her what her son does, she was really proud. He's a pro bodybuilder. And I believed it because it's coming out of my mum's mouth. The person you probably have most trust for and love is one of your parents, whichever one it may be. And then, like I say, a few years after that, like, not being the case anymore, I take care, bye-bye. I'm convincing myself. I'm trying to tell myself, like, why am I? I had like an identity crisis to a degree because, you know, other people can tell you you're great or you're this or that, but it doesn't matter if you don't feel like it in yourself. The answer is still essentially no. I'm not this. So I was talking to Nick earlier, and I was just saying, like, I did struggle to come here and do this weekend, but I had to do it to kind of reinforce what I am and who I am. You know, it was very easy for me to say no to a guest pose because it's safe and comfortable. But I will say this, like, after doing that guest pose, it kind of adds to my career and makes me realise that those kind of events that you take place in, they're real, they did happen. And because they're real and they did happen and now they're part of reality, it makes it easier for me to say to myself, James, you're not living a lie, you are what you say you are. Because if you were lying, if you're not what you say you are, these people wouldn't turn up and they wouldn't support you. So I said to myself last year, I was like, I'm going to compete and I'm going to see how well I can do, but remove the thought of comparison. So I'm going to just like channel in on myself. I'm going to train, I'm going to enjoy it. And I'm not going to think about, is he better than me? Am I better than him? Any of that. And I had a good year. I got to the Olympia. You know, I won a pro show. And ultimately, it was a good physique, wasn't it? And the reason I kind of highlight this whole, like, try not to compare, and the advice I'll give, is that we have to remember that we are all just different. Like, we're not the same. And we will never be the same. And just because we're not the same doesn't mean something's better or worse. Like, don't get me wrong, I can see at a bodybuilding show who fits the criteria more and who should win and who shouldn't, based on if they meet the criteria. But, like, the minute you get off that stage as a human, like, I don't want people to carry that off stage with them. I don't want them to walk away from the stage and be like, well, that's my worth as a man or my worth as a woman, because it's not true. It's not true. You know, it's very situational. Bodybuilding is just there for the day. You go on the stage and you put yourself up to be judged for something that is purely based on a system that's in place, and that doesn't determine whether you're a good person or not. You know, I've got older, and I used to be a young man, and I used to be far more aggressive in the whole, I want to be better than him, and yeah, I would be lying if I said I didn't think that was necessary in the early stages in order to become good at anything, because I think you have to be like that whatever you do. Yeah. Like, you have to have a form of competitiveness in your nature, otherwise why are you going to do well? Yeah. But I will say this, like, in time, just like try to like respect how far you've come and what you are, and don't put too much emphasis on not coming out on top if on the odd occasion you don't. And with that, my advice would be, damn right, go in the gym, try and train harder than everyone else. I still think you can train harder than everyone else. I still think you can eat better than everyone else. I think you can be the best at bodybuilding. And being the best at bodybuilding, I think, means more than being the best bodybuilder, if that makes sense. Because I think real people recognize the people that do the process. Listen, who's going to touch Phil Heath? Like, you could be the most accurate bodybuilder on this planet and potentially still not beat Phil Heath. And that's kind of why I say what I say, because if you love bodybuilding, you'll understand what bodybuilding is first and foremost. Is a lifestyle. It's almost a religion. Like, you choose to live a certain way, you choose to wake up a certain way and do a certain thing. And that's why I have this opinion on it now where I'm like, look, just don't place too much emphasis on that stage day. Like, be the best you can be, but don't let that be what determines your value in real life. Because you'll have your fans that love how you train. Like, I have fans because of the way I lift. And then so-and-so will have fans because of the way he looks. Yeah. Like, it all works out at the end for some reason or not, but hopefully that's an answer that kind of explains that. Did that make sense to you, Constantine? Some stuff to chop away there if you need to.
I'm sorted now. I'm in a good spot where I'm kind of in my off-season, pushing my way up, training hard and just falling in love with the grind again. And then hopefully by March time I'll be able to bring in something real good and do everybody proud of myself. So you know, this is the first time I've ever like stood on stage with you?
Yeah, without clothes on.
Yeah, without clothes on? Bro, you're fucking huge.
I'm glad I'm retired.
It's quite funny because like in England you get a few like comparisons to people over the years, and I never really compare myself, and I never think you really should. But one of the people I do look up to is obviously Branch, and over the years there's been the odd comment. Branch obviously had ridiculous legs, so a lot of my motivation comes from Branch. He's kind of like the guy that I know that's been up against the best that's out there, genetically, work rate, you name it, whatever, and been able to come out on top. And we actually met back in, I think it was like 2000, and I don't know, he came for a tour in England and we went for fish and chips. And I just remember sitting there and asking you all the stories about the Arnold Classic and the people you were against, your Dexter Jacksons, etc. And it stuck with me that you can be the best and beat anybody if you just give it your all and stay disciplined. Don't listen to the naysayers. Listen to your circle, people you trust, and just keep grinding. So this is just a personal thank you for all the motivation over the years since way back when. So hopefully I can do something good at the Arnold. If I did ever pull off that win, if I did, it'd be a dedication to Branch Arnold for sure.
Like I said when I introduced you, you're a dinosaur. And I mean that in all the best possible ways, because you're the last of those old school bodybuilders that I looked up to, like Dorian and Richard Sparry and people like that motivated me. And you're the last guy out there, one of the last guys out there. There's some other ones that still believe in hard work and still willing to do whatever it takes to be the best in the world. And when you're trying to be the best in the world, it's something you got to be willing to do what nobody else will do. You got to be willing to suffer, sweat, and bleed to do that. So, and this man right here embodies all that. So, congratulations to you. I wish you all the best. So don't go anywhere.